The room went quiet the moment Lakisha Reed saw her paycheck. Not confused quiet. Not surprised quiet. The kind of quiet that hits when something feels wrong, and deep down, you already know it is. She stood there in the break room, the paper trembling slightly in her hand, eyes scanning the numbers again and again like maybe they would fix themselves if she stared long enough, but they didn't, and across the room, leaning against the counter like he had been waiting for this exact reaction, stood Mr. Caldwell, the kind of boss who never raised his voice because he didn't have to, the kind who believed power didn't need explanation. Before we start, hit that like and subscribe button, then comment where you're watching from. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming. Lakisha took a slow breath and walked over, each step controlled, measured, because in places like this your tone mattered more than your truth, and when she held up the check and said there had to be a mistake, Caldwell didn't even bother pretending to look surprised, didn't even pretend to check properly, just glanced once and handed it back like it was already settled. No mistake, he said. Simple. Cold. Final. Lakisha felt something tighten in her chest, but she kept her voice steady, explaining her overtime, the extra hours, the shifts nobody else wanted, and that's when Caldwell gave that slight smirk, the one that didn't just dismiss what you said, it erased it, reducing it to something not worth considering. You were adjusted, Caldwell replied casually. Adjusted. A word that sounded professional, but felt personal. Lakisha repeated it, slower this time, trying to understand how hard work could suddenly turn into a deduction, but Caldwell just shrugged, saying it was a performance decision, saying Lakisha didn't meet expectations, and that's when the weight of it really landed, because Lakisha knew, everyone in that warehouse knew, that wasn't true, but truth didn't seem to matter in that moment. What mattered was who was speaking. And who wasn't being heard. You didn't say anything about a review, Lakisha said carefully, choosing her words like they could either protect her or break her. Caldwell leaned in slightly, his tone sharpening just enough to remind Lakisha where she stood. I don't need your permission to run my business. The room didn't move, but it was listening, every worker nearby pretending to focus on something else while catching every word, because they had seen this before, maybe not this exact moment, but the pattern, the quiet cutting down of someone who didn't fight back. But Lakisha didn't step back. Not this time. She told Caldwell it wasn't right, that cutting her pay without explanation crossed a line, and Caldwell's response came with a quiet laugh, the kind that didn't need volume to feel disrespectful. And what are you going to do about it? There it was. Not just authority, but a challenge. The kind meant to remind you that the system wasn't built for you to win. Lakisha paused, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she understood what answering meant, and when she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost too calm. I'll take it higher. For the first time, Caldwell's expression shifted, just slightly, just enough to show that something about that response didn't sit comfortably, but he recovered quickly, asking if Lakisha really thought anyone would believe her over management, over paperwork, over the version of the story that already favored him. Lakisha didn't argue. Didn't raise her voice. Because she had already done something Caldwell didn't know about. She had already taken it higher. Quietly. Days ago. Because Lakisha wasn't reacting in the moment, she had been preparing for it, documenting hours, saving messages, tracking inconsistencies, building something stronger than words. Proof. And proof doesn't need to shout. It just needs the right moment. The shift ended like any other, workers clocking out, conversations fading, lights dimming, and Caldwell returned to his office with the same confidence he walked in with, believing this would pass like every other complaint, every other quiet injustice that never made it beyond those walls. Until his phone rang. Late. Unexpected. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer, and when the voice on the other end introduced itself as corporate compliance, something inside him shifted instantly, because that wasn't a call you brushed off, that wasn't a conversation you controlled. The words that followed didn't accuse loudly, they didn't need to. They listed facts. Wage discrepancies. Documented inconsistencies. Submitted evidence. And just like that, the ground under Caldwell's confidence began to crack, because evidence doesn't care about authority, it doesn't care about tone, it doesn't care who usually wins, it only cares about truth. He tried to downplay it, tried to call it a misunderstanding, but the voice on the phone didn't argue, didn't react, just confirmed what had been received and what would happen next, a formal review, a compliance hearing, possible suspension, and that's when it hit him fully, because this wasn't a conversation he could shut down. This was a process. And processes don't bend easily. Across town, Lakisha sat quietly, her phone lighting up with confirmation, a case number, a record of everything she had submitted, and for the first time since that paycheck hit her hand, she exhaled, not in relief, but in recognition that something had finally started moving. Because justice doesn't always show up immediately. Sometimes it builds in silence, piece by piece, until the moment it can't be ignored anymore. But just as that thought settled in, her phone buzzed again. Another message. Different number. She frowned slightly and opened it, expecting something routine, something small, but what she saw made her sit up straight. Because this wasn't from corporate. This wasn't from the company at all. It was from someone else. Someone who had been watching. And the message was short. Too short. You're not the only one, and what you started is bigger than you think. Lakisha stared at the screen, the weight of those words settling in slowly, because whatever she thought this was, it wasn't just about her paycheck anymore. It wasn't just about one boss. It was something larger. Deeper. And whatever came next wasn't just going to change her situation. It was going to expose everything. Lakisha didn't sleep that night. Not because she was afraid, but because her mind wouldn't slow down. That message kept replaying in her head. You're not the only one, and what you started is bigger than you think. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a warning. And warnings only come when there's more beneath the surface. By morning, Lakisha was already at her kitchen table, her laptop open, the case file from corporate pulled up again, every document she had submitted laid out like pieces of a puzzle she was just beginning to understand, and for the first time, she wasn't just looking at her situation, she was looking for patterns. Names. Dates. Pay periods. And then she saw it. Small at first. Easy to miss. But once it clicked, it couldn't be unseen. Her deductions weren't random. They lined up with others. The same weeks. The same adjustments. Different employees, same pattern. Lakisha leaned back slowly, her chest tightening, not with fear, but with realization. This wasn't just about her paycheck. This was a system. And Caldwell wasn't just making decisions. He was repeating them. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She stared at it for a second, then answered. Hello? A pause. Then a voice. Calm. Careful. You got the message. Lakisha didn't respond immediately. Who is this? She asked. Someone who used to work where you do, the voice replied. Before I realized what he was doing. Lakisha sat up straighter. What do you mean? Another pause. Like the person on the other end was choosing their words carefully. He's been cutting pay for months. Targeting people he thinks won't fight back, or won't be believed if they do. The words landed heavy. Because Lakisha already knew they were true. I reported it, the voice continued. Nothing happened. My complaint disappeared. Lakisha frowned. Then how is mine different? This time, the answer came without hesitation. Because you didn't just report it, you documented it. Silence filled the space between them. Because that difference mattered. Proof changes everything. I have more, the voice added. Emails. Schedules. Names. If you're serious about this, you're going to need it. Lakisha's grip tightened on her phone. I am serious. Good, the voice said. Because once this starts, it won't stop with him. The line went dead. Lakisha sat there, staring at the screen, her reflection faintly staring back at her, and in that moment, she understood something clearly. This wasn't just a complaint anymore. This was exposure. And exposure doesn't stay contained. Days passed, but the tension didn't fade, it built. At work, Caldwell acted normal. Too normal. Walking the floor like nothing had changed, like the call never happened, like the ground beneath him wasn't already shifting. But Lakisha saw it. The subtle cracks. The way he checked his phone more often. The way his tone tightened when speaking to upper management. The way confidence started turning into control. And control only shows up when power feels threatened. Then the email came. Company-wide. Mandatory meeting. Immediate attendance required. No details. Just urgency. The warehouse floor buzzed with whispers as employees gathered, confusion mixing with curiosity, and at the front stood Caldwell, his posture stiff, his usual confidence barely holding together, and next to him, someone new. A corporate representative. The room quieted. And that's when everything changed. The representative stepped forward, her voice clear, controlled, impossible to ignore. An internal audit has revealed significant payroll discrepancies within this facility. A ripple moved through the crowd. Lakisha didn't move. Didn't react. Because she already knew. This includes unauthorized pay reductions, falsified records, and targeted employee adjustments without proper documentation. Now the room wasn't just quiet. It was locked in. Because everyone felt it. This wasn't random. This was real. The representative turned slightly. Mr. Caldwell has been placed under immediate suspension pending full investigation. Gasps broke through the silence. Not loud, but enough. Because no one expected it to go this far. Not this fast. Caldwell stepped forward, his voice tight, controlled, but no longer confident. This is a misunderstanding. It's documented, she interrupted. And just like that, it was over. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But completely. Because the same system Caldwell thought would protect him, was now holding him accountable. Lakisha stood there, watching it unfold, not with satisfaction, not with revenge, but with something deeper. Validation. Because the truth didn't just surface. It stood tall. And it stayed. But the moment didn't end there. The representative looked out at the employees again. If you have experienced similar discrepancies, you are encouraged to come forward. This investigation is ongoing. That's when it happened. One hand went up. Then another. Then 3 more. Because courage spreads. And once someone breaks the silence, others realize they can too. Lakisha felt it. That shift. That moment where fear turns into voice. And suddenly, she wasn't alone anymore. The meeting ended, but the impact didn't. People didn't rush out. They stayed. Talking. Sharing. Realizing. Because what happened wasn't just about one boss falling. It was about a system being exposed. And Lakisha? She didn't just stand up for herself. She opened the door for everyone else. Days later, she received another message. Different this time. Official. Confirmed findings. Back pay issued. Policy changes implemented. And one final line that stayed with her longer than anything else. Your report initiated a full review across multiple locations. Lakisha sat quietly, reading it again. Because what started as one moment, one paycheck, one decision to speak up, had turned into something bigger than she ever expected. And that's the part people don't always see. Standing up isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated, patient. But when it's backed by truth, it doesn't just fix one problem. It changes the system that allowed it to happen. And the lesson? Never let someone convince you that your voice doesn't matter. Because the moment you decide to use it, you don't just change your story. You give others the courage to change theirs too. Lakisha didn't just get her pay back. She got her power back. And in doing that, she made sure no one else would have to fight the same battle alone. The end. Comment below if you know you enjoyed the story. Also don't forget to follow, subscribe and turn on the notification button for more stories coming up.